Last time slot, last day, awesome, except for Betz, wherever she went. Oh, there you are. I'm supposed to warm up the crowd, so woohoo. What we're going to talk about today is two things. We've got a problem that we're dealing with at MacEwan, and a solution that we're working towards to solve that problem, so hopefully you guys will find this interesting. Our problem is one that's shared by a lot of different libraries, academic and public. And I think it's actually a symptom of the issue of economic lock-in that John and Corey from UVic talked about the other day. And the problem is just that we have all of these different online environments, all of these different experiences that are really difficult for our users to navigate. So we've got library website, we have libguides, we have a discovery tool, we have course management systems, we have a student portal, we have an interlibrary loan system, we have an e-reserve system. Does it sound familiar? Yeah, it's a consistent problem, I think. So each of these has a different web space, right? It has a different interface. It's a different room for the users to go into when they're looking for something, anything. And most of these are customizable only to the extent that we can sort of tweak some of the admin interfaces, unless you really get into every single product, right? So you can change the colors. You can slap your brand in there if you want to. You might be able to change some of the menu headings. And that's most of the control that we have over these different products. As librarians, we spend a lot of time navigating these different experiences. We're comfortable with them. We know how they work. We know how they interact with each other. But our users, especially users at MacEwan who are mostly 18-year-old students, 19-year-old students, they don't really understand how these different environments work together. And this isn't news to any of you guys. I'm not saying anything brand new and exciting up here. But it's something I think that we tend to forget because we get so comfortable in these environments ourselves. So that's really the problem. Everybody else had unicorns and cats, so here you go. We can't really train our users. I don't know what he's done to his cat to make this happen, but so it goes. Users are going to behave in the ways that are intuitive to them based on the whole of their online experience. Just like Robert's cat, we can't force them into awkward and uncomfortable spaces to get what they want. If they want a drink of water, we shouldn't make them drink it out of the toilet. So I had to work really hard to come up with some kind of a parallel between this photo and our talk, but actually it works quite well. So just to demonstrate exactly what I'm talking about, this is a typical user experience for some students at our institution. So we have a widget here. How many of you have some widgets on your homepage? Yeah, search widgets of some kind. Everybody does, right? That's how we get, those are the doors into the different rooms, widgets. We drop a search widget into a course management system. We put search widgets on our homepage. We have our libguides widgets in our CMSs. They're all over the place. So they're these doors into all of these different rooms. So a student wants to find information about something, so they type in some keywords. So it's kind of small there. This says history of nursing. Type in some keywords into our EDS search widget. Okay, they're launched into this space. How many of you have a space that looks kind of like this in your environments? Yeah, there's a typical EBSCO interface. So this is our EDS. So it looks really different from the place they just were. But unlike us, they don't know that this is vendor-provided content. They don't know that this isn't the library's website, and that we, at this point, have divested all control over that interface to them, right? So here they are. Once they're here, they'll scroll around a little bit. They might do a couple of different searches to find what they're looking for. Here, somebody's found something good, capturing nursing history. It's a book. Okay, we also have a shared ILS, right? So we work with a number of other institutions in and around Edmonton and northern Alberta. We all have a shared catalog. So this book is at a different library. It's not at our library, so they have to place a hold on it. If they can find the hold button, they might do that. So, now they've been launched into another room. We're now in the NEOS Library Catalog, which is CIRCE. Okay, so now they need to get the book. They can place a hold on the book. At this point, they're asked to log in with a barcode and a PIN number, which is completely different from their institutional login. Is this experience familiar to you guys, this frustrating process that we have to get users to the material that they want? Okay, so finally, look at this. I finally placed a hold on a book. I'm happy. I've got my material. I want to go back to my search, but I don't know how to do that. I've been popped into a different open window, which is two open windows away from where I was originally, right? So I have to know that I need to click on that tab that's hidden in the back to get back there. And all of this stuff can be solved, right? There are things that we can do to fix this process. But mostly what we do is we train our users. We spend a lot of time teaching them how to navigate around our spaces. And I think it's a losing battle. It's a huge drain on our staff resources. A lot of questions that we get at the reference desk aren't about evaluating and assessing and understanding information critically. The questions are about how do I get from this interface to a different interface? And I think that's a bigger problem maybe than we think that it is sometimes. It has big impact on our users, and it impacts other things too. This is a quote from a survey that we did of our students. MacEwan did it, not the library. It was an institution-wide survey of baccalaureate students. And this is what the survey said. Satisfaction with the library is high when it comes to helpfulness of staff and services. However, in terms of the library's collections, i.e. books, journals, videos, DVDs, e-resources, satisfaction is moderate at best and has been decreasing steadily since 2008. Something you should know about MacEwan is that we began granting baccalaureate degrees back in 2006 and have been seeing huge increases in our collections dollars. So not just like 2% or 3%, we've been doubling collections in different subject areas to support undergraduate research in those areas because we're now offering degrees. So our collections are hugely growing and growing rapidly, and yet we're still seeing satisfaction going down with the collections. And I think that this is more about access than it is about holdings. It's about discoverability and findability of those resources. There's no point in having enormous library collections if our users can't get to them because they're so frustrated by these multiple interfaces that they're having to navigate. This is LibQual. How many of you do LibQual at your institutions? Quite a few of you, yeah. So LibQual measures gaps in users' expectations with the service that they're actually provided. So in the LibQual section that talks about sort of library web resources, the greatest levels of dissatisfaction are focused on expectations for a website that enables users to locate information on their own, easy-to-use access tools that allow users to find things on their own, and making information easily accessible for independent use. And I could see this probably happening in a lot of different institutions too, not just us. And I think this problem is related, again, to all of those different spaces they have to get to find something. Hey, this is really the most telling thing. We just have a survey that sits on our site that people fill out when they get pissed off at us. So today, what was your purpose of your visit to the library's website today? I was trying to find articles for occupational health. Were you able to complete your task today? That should be a really basic, easy thing. I need an article on a subject area. I should be able to go to the library and find that article. But no, they couldn't find any articles about occupational health. So tell us why. Search engine sucks. Okay, do you have any other comments? It shouldn't be so difficult. So that's sort of what I've been thinking a lot about for the last little while. Search engines suck, and it shouldn't be so difficult. These are students that have a very different expectation for what we should be providing them, what we actually are giving them. The other issue that we have at MacEwan, and this is just going to feed into some of the stuff that Robert will be talking about later, is a lack of a really friendly mobile environment. So I know lots of you are way further ahead than we are in this realm, but this is what our website looks like on my iPhone. And this is what the NEOS Library catalog looks like on my iPhone. I don't know about you, but my fingers are too fat to click on any of those links, and it's a really unsuccessful experience. So Pew Internet and American Life Project update on smartphone ownership in September, I think 66% of Americans ages 18 to 29, so that's right in our demographic, own smartphones, and 17% of cell phone owners do most of their online browsing on their phone rather than a computer or other device. So I still hear, which is shocking to me, I still hear from people, definitely not in this room, but in other rooms that I talk to, saying things like, well, not that many mobile users come to our library's website. People prefer to do their browsing on a full-sized device, but I don't think that's true anymore. According to ComScore, Device Essentials, mobile phones and tablets accounted for a combined 13.3% of total internet page views in August 2012, so that's doubling their share of traffic in just 1 year. So I think within the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to be looking at people preferring to access this information in those kinds of environments instead of from laptops or desktops, so no surprise there. So we don't think that the fix is to train our users. We want them to be toilet drinking cats if that's what they want to be. I think we need to adapt our spaces to meet their needs, and we need to get their attention in some way. So we've sort of been waiting for vendors to do this, right? I've been waiting for a really good product to come along that's going to integrate all of our resources in one spot and provide us with one seamless online environment. But I don't think that's actually going to be happening anytime soon, right? There's too much proprietary stuff going on in the marketplace, too many different conflicting interests for anyone to say, I'm going to create that one beautiful product for you. That's what we thought discovery tools would be, and they're not that, right? That's what we thought the next gen ILS would be, and it's not really that. So we needed to do something. So what did we do? We wanted to create an integrated online environment that pulls in all of the content and tools we subscribe to and presents them in a single unified space. So consistent look, consistent language, consistent navigation, and seamless authentication. So no big deal, that's it, done. So we started talking about this last September. It's a really big idea, but I think that we can do it. We might not be able to do it all at once. We can just do it in small pieces. So we called our vision the Virtual Services Integration Project, or VSIP. That sounded a little bit like an STD. So the sorry, super ambiguous and overly ambitious label Project Utopia started being bandied about, which I think is even worse than VSIP, but whatever, that's what it's called. And the major tenets of the project are this. Okay, to simplify access to our library resources, to provide access via all devices, and to provide a common experience between different platforms. So again, it seems simple. It seems really, of course, that's what we should be doing, but it is so incredibly difficult to make that happen. So we started out by breaking this project into 2 phases. We wanted to start with what we saw as a major priority, which would be mobile access for us. Again, we're really behind the curve on this. A lot of you are way further ahead of us. So we tried to jump in with mobile access. And luckily for us, having that no mobile capability was kind of a good thing, because it gave us carte blanche over what we could do. There were no expectations out there. Everything that was online for mobile devices really, really sucked for our library. So everything we did would be seen as an improvement. So that was good. We needed to start with a big win, proof of concept, sort of beta project that would generate some positive response from users and from our administration at our institution, and to give us sort of a testing ground for this concept of integrating things in our own space. So that's why we started with an iPhone app. We also started with an iPhone app because it's a little bit sexy, maybe, and could secure us some funding from outside the library. And we know that over 70% of our students are iPhone users, so that's a big chunk for us. So that's going to be a big win for what we're doing. The second deliverable in this project will be full-scale integration of this stuff into a responsive design website. So that's where we take those concepts that we're developing in the app and we turn them into like a big picture, big thing that can be done in all environments, not just that really restricted, limited area. All right, these are some of the concepts we're working through. So one access point replacing multiple access points. Right? Mobile and desktop interfaces, ooh, nothing big and revolutionary there. User aware, so a place that knows who I am. Maybe it knows what courses I'm taking. It definitely knows what resources I have checked out. It knows where there are connections between me and the rest of the university. Right? Fast and intuitive access, consistent and predictable experience. Okay, project mottos. This one is really, really, really important for us. Think big. So we have this big, enormous idea that seems really impossible if you think about it that way, but start small, move fast. And that's lifted from Michael Edson's keynote talk at Computers and Libraries last year. But think big, start small, move fast. So just get it going. And the other thing that we had to recognize that we're not always the experts. We wanted to get it done right, and we wanted to get it done fast, especially that first chunk, that little mobile app, right? So we're in the unusually awesome position of having some funding. We submitted a proposal to our student technology fee and got some big chunks of money to complete these 2 phases of this project. That's awesome. But one thing that we don't always have is staff resources, time, and expertise to build some of this stuff. Our programmer, Michael Schouten, is amazing. He's a genius, but he's also working on about 15 other projects at the same time and would have had to start from scratch learning Objective-C. Not the best use of his time. So we hired a company to work with us to make this vision a reality. So we've been working with Hybrid Forge. They're a local group in Edmonton to create the app for us. So where are we now? We have an app in the App Store. We started this project in July and launched our app October 9th. So that was a pretty fast timeline. That's what you can do when you work with dedicated external developers. That was really exciting. And we're using the concepts they're working quite well in the app so far. We're on target to launch a fully featured responsive web environment for next year in the fall. So Robert's going to talk a lot more about what we're actually doing. That's just sort of the philosophical overpinning. So I'll turn it over to him.
So Sonya has given you an overview of the project, and now I'm going to give you a brief overview of how we made the project happen. I'm going to start by giving you an overview of how I explained, or we explained, to stakeholders and decision makers back at MacEwan about how we were going to do this. So in order to get funding and to get project approval, we had to explain that this was possible. And so we had to explain web services and APIs. And so I know all of you know this, but I'm going to give you this little slide anyway, because it might be useful in explaining this as I had to stakeholders back home. So the library has services and resources. Some service examples are the ILS, e-reserves, room booking software, and resources, of course, are content-based things like physical resources, e-articles, or electronic content, and audio-video. And of course, each one of these services and resources has its own access point. And we also have one hybrid service. It's the EBSCO Discovery Service, and it sort of acts as an ILS and provides content at the same time. And it too also has its own access point. And what we want to do, and what we have to do here, is use APIs to bypass those access points, go straight to the data source and the source of these functions, and that way we can actually integrate more than one function and more than one piece of data from different resources and services into one experience. So this is just a little model here that I think worked because we did get project approval and we did get the funding we needed to do this. So I'm going to give you a bit of a brief tour of the app now and talk to you a little bit about how some things in the app work. So this is the authentication piece. You're just watching the simulator here and my super cool mouse finger. So what just happened here is we authenticated to the app using LDAP. So when a student or faculty member actually authenticates, what we do is we send back tokens to the app. We send tokens for the EDS product, that's the EBSCO Discovery Service. We also send tokens for CIRSE and for a few homegrown databases that are being accessed by the app by APIs for extra content. We also send back CIRSE credentials, so the barcode and the PIN, because we need to simulate single sign-on here. We don't have direct access to the ILS. So what we do is we've created a database of barcodes and PINs and matched that up with LDAP credentials using the person ID that is also stored in LDAP. That comes from CIRSE. So we send that back, and that way the app can use the CIRSE web services and place holds and that sort of thing. So speaking of holds, the account function in the app pretty much gives you these following things. You can view a list of holds, you can place holds, cancel holds, you can see your items out, you can renew items, and you can see a list of fees. So here's a little demo of doing that. So now we're querying web services to have a look at my list of items out. I'm going to cancel a hold. What else is going to happen here? We're probably going to go and look at items that are on loan. We can renew an item pretty easily here. So this is so much easier than doing this on the web, because you have to, for each item, put in a barcode and PIN. So of course, you don't have to know your barcode or PIN. You don't have to know anything about that, because it's just integrated right into the system. So you can see a list of fees there that were on my account. So for search, we're using the EBSCO Discovery product, their API, which is relatively new. I think it was released in May. And that's the bulk of this app. So here's a quick demo of search. This is our search screen so far. So we're going to do a search for cathedral architecture. And we get back, of course, items from our electronic collection and our physical holdings. So this is some electronic content. You can click View Content, and you can look at PDFs or HTML content, whatever happens to be the case. You can save that content to your phone so that you can look at it later. And you can also share that content. And so this screen, I'd love to show you the actual screen on my iPhone, because this is on the simulator, and on a simulator you can't install other things like iBooks or Google Drive or Dropbox or Mendeley, but when you do those, when you do have those apps on your phone, you get icons for all of those as well. So not only can you print from here and copy and email, but you can share that with Dropbox, which is great because it's actually super easy to find articles on the phone. So you find them on the phone, and you have your desktop right here, and your Dropbox folder's open, and then you can read them right on your desktop without having to do any manipulation. It just syncs straight to your desktop, and you're good to go. Oops, wrong button. So I think I'm going to show you what it's like to search for something else here, probably a book. Yes, so there's some limiters involved, and we're going to do a book search now. So when you select a book, you can look at the cover art. You can make it bigger if that matters. You can see this holdings tab here. This holdings tab is actually information coming from Circe. The details tab is information coming from the EBSCO Discovery Service. And placing a hold, of course, is using the Circe web services. So we've integrated two things here. We've integrated the EBSCO Discovery Service and the Circe product, the ILS, into one experience. So the EBSCO API has some documentation. It's not the greatest documentation, I have to say, and we've had this discussion with EBSCO, so this is no surprise to them if they're watching. The documentation has some examples. We're hoping, and we've talked to them about providing better documentation on future releases, but a few examples here. 4 source types. So when you saw that limiting pane that was in the search just a second ago, obviously we had to know all the different source types that we could limit by, but they weren't listed in the documentation. So what we had to do is do example or just search and get content back in the API, and then look at where the source type was listed in the search string or the response from the API, and make our own list. So not the best way of going about doing that. Another example of where documentation would be helpful was when we were looking at HTML content. There was a lot of non-standard tags that came back in the response, and so we asked EBSCO for a list of what those tags were so that we could parse that data out, but they didn't have a list. So we basically had to go through and look at all these tags and make our own list and parse that data, which wasn't the best use of time. And response time, so these are just 2 things about the EBSCO API that we'd like to see improved, documentation and response time. It's better than it used to be. It's a lot faster than it was when it was first released in May, but it could be better. You're definitely using faster APIs and web services in this app, and I think users of the app will expect a better response time. But the app the API is fairly good overall. It's got lots of potential, and the developers who have been using it say they quite like it now that they're familiar with it. So documentation, response time, those 2 things would be good. So for library information, this is basically the stuff that we find that people use on the website the most. They want to know how to contact the library, how to contact Sonya or I or anyone else. They want to know when the library's open, and they want to know where it is. Most of the time, the location is probably pretty much given since we only have 4 campuses. But the 2 first things are important. So here's a little demo of what it looks like to look up that information. So we're pulling this again from our website. So you can just look at contact information for a campus. You can view hours. You can change the date, so you're always seeing the hours for the day you're on. So we'll just look at what the hours will be on the 28th. And there they are. And of course, we link to maps as well. So you can see where the campus is. And we have 4 campuses, only 3 are showing on this map because the other one's really far away. And we can link out and get directions from the Google web app. So that's that portion, and they'll load eventually here. So those are directions from Montreal to Edmonton, because I did that little thing just a few days ago. So yeah, that's that portion. We have some featured lists in the app, and somebody had talked earlier in the conference about a random button, right? We wanted to have some sort of content in the app that you didn't have to search for, that would just appear. So these are featured lists. Basically what we've done is we're doing a search for materials in the ILS and that are new, right? And we've categorized them and we've sent, or the app, what it's doing is actually getting the item ID from a database on MacEwan servers. And once it gets that, it goes out to EBSCO's API and gets all the details and the cover art. So that's a quick example of featured lists, new materials, and all that information is stored on a local database and is queried by an API that we've written for, or that our programmer in-house, Michael, has written for this project. So where we're at now is that we've consolidated 3 separate spaces into a mobile environment. We've got library information, which is coming from library websites, so some library website information. Search, which we're using the EBSCO discovery service for, and library account and holds and all the rest of that stuff, which is coming from the library's OPAC. Where we want to go is we want to integrate more content eventually. So one of the first things on the list is to use the MusicBrainz service. Maybe you've heard of this, maybe you haven't. It's like Grace Note, provides lots of extra metadata for albums, so we can get at least some album cover art in there because EBSCO's not returning very good results for that. We want to build in citations. Right now in EBSCO Discovery Service on the web, you can use the citation engine, and I think if we are going to be emailing or sharing articles, we definitely want to send a citation along with that. So we're going to do that. We're also talking to Alexander Street Press about integrating their content. So we have streaming video and audio from Alexander Street Press. And so I emailed them the other day, and they called me back and said, hey, that's great. We're working on this API, and we'd like to work with you. So we're hoping to see that in the next couple of months. And that'd be really great. We want to add favorites. So you can, when you're searching, you can just add, sort of flag an item as a favorite. And we also want people to be able to organize those. And if they're organizing them into folders, we definitely think they should be able to share those folders with other peers. So if you're in a class doing a group project and you've got 4 people in a group, you should be able to share that folder with everyone in the group. And that would include, of course, content that you've downloaded from that's electronic, as well as just links to physical content. Library maps, we want to build maps of our library and actually show where the ranges are and build a database alongside of that shows that would actually help people find a book on the shelf. So it's not very hard to do. We can go and scan the beginning and the end of each range. And then we know the call number range that's in between, and we can at least give an approximate location of where to find a book in the library. Barcode scanning, you've probably all seen this before in random other apps where you can scan a barcode or the cover of a book and have it OCR'd, and then it will do a search in whatever database you happen to be using at the time, say like at Chapters or something like that. So we'll probably build this in at some point. And last but not least, and this is not anytime soon, but I do hope that before we put all of our collection in very, very, very tall shelving that we access with a robot of some sort, I'd like to see it RFID'd. And at some point, we will have NFC technology in the iPhone, and like it currently exists, I believe, in the Samsung Galaxy. And the possibilities there, as you can imagine, are endless. So I hope that comes not too far in the distant future. I want to show some statistics about mobile usage in libraries. And this comes from, I want to show these because we've chosen iPhone, and we've told you already that a lot of our students use iPhone. But I want to just show you how successful it can be. And maybe some of you remember me presenting in Winnipeg 2 years ago when I was about a project that I worked on for the TRAC consortium in Alberta. And TRAC is consortium of 4 regional library systems. There's 156 public libraries in that consortium. And in 2009, November of 2009 to be exact, I said we need to build an iPhone app. And why? It was because TELUS and Bell were now offering iPhones or are supporting that technology. And this was our way of responding to what was happening locally. So it was a hard sell because we only had 0.4% of the access to the database was coming from mobile devices. But we did it, and by May, we also had an iPad app available. So that's 2 apps. They're different. It's not just working on an iPad. It's an iPad-specific app. We saw statistics increase to 6.3% at that time, and they just kept climbing, and that's a good thing. In February, Polaris, that's the ILS that was used at TRAC, it still is, released a mobile catalog. So I should just explain some of the statistics you're seeing. The very top one, web catalog, that's access from PCs. Below that is access from mobile devices to the full-scale web catalog. Below that is the Polaris mobile pack designed for mobile devices. And then below that, it's pretty obvious what there is. So last year, September, we stats just keep climbing. It's crazy how many people are using mobile now. And in September is when in Google Analytics we were able to see the difference between mobile devices. So we've got the first number that's listed in the categories where there are two numbers is the total number of access or page views really from mobile devices. The one next to it is that from Apple devices. So we're seeing a lot of Apple devices used in Alberta, right? So that's 19.8% of the library usage coming from mobile devices. 19.1% of complete library usage is coming from Apple devices. And then just last month, we're at a ridiculously high number of 33.7% mobile access. 31.5% is from Apple devices. And because that's so ridiculous, I thought we should also we should compare. So now we're looking at Edmonton Public Library stats, which are pretty high as well. 21% mobile last month. So just to give a little bit of comparison, and I asked Peter at Edmonton Public Library if we could use statistics because they also have an iPhone app, so it's something comparable. And what we're doing with these statistics is showing people back at MacEwan that mobile is important. With TRAC and MacEwan, we're actually kind of comparable. We have about 1 million page views each year in each institution, and I think this is where we're headed. Once we release the iPhone, well, it's released now, and once we continue going down this path, I think we're going to see a lot of uptake in mobile. So a project recap, just before I finish. At this point, we've created this app not so much to be a mobile presence, although that's a great byproduct, but we've created it because it's really a pilot, it's a beta for a larger project. We want to integrate services from multiple spaces, combine that into one space, and we want to do that not only in mobile, but in the full web, and building an iPhone app was a great place to start doing that. All of the infrastructure that we've used in the iPhone app is transferable, so all the testing we went through and finding out what worked, what didn't, once that's done and it's all tweaked, we can just transfer that. Obviously, we need to translate that code into whatever code we need to translate it into for whatever CMS we use, which is not yet determined, but hopefully Drupal. And the last thing is that when the CMS is chosen and built, we're going to focus on preferences and content and the experience. So if you download content in one part of your library experience, we want to also have that visible and ready for you in the other. So if you're downloading an article on the phone, you should have that readily accessible to you next time you log into the CMS. And if you rely on search history in the CMS, then you should be able to see that when you log into the phone. This is the timeline for the project. We started talking about all of this stuff in October. We had a great meeting. It was really fun. And so then Sonya and Gord back at MacEwan did all this writing and this proposal stuff, and it was fantastic, and we submitted that probably April, maybe May. We got funding fairly soon afterwards. And our goal was to have the iPhone ready in September, which it was, but it wasn't in the store in September. So we were just a little bit late, but I'd say that's pretty good. October, just a few weeks. And the goal is to have the CMS running for next September. Yeah, so that's the timeline. And that's the project. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much for the information. I wanted to know, when you're saying that your app infrastructure will serve as basis for your CMS, could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so obviously there's going to be different code, right? But the work that we put into designing the app, what it does, what sort of functions that it uses from the API, figuring out how to use the API without documentation, all of that infrastructure is transferable. So not the code, but we have spoken with the people who have written the code for us, and it is in the books to have them transfer it for us. I think we're going to do a lot more in-house development when it comes to the CMS, because we do have those skills in-house. So we'll transfer that, get started, get where we left off with the app in CMS world, and then pick up from there.
Yeah. Is your CMS a library CMS or a university?
It's library. We have some really great independents, but we work quite collaboratively with our campus-wide IT, but we do have our own IT and our own separate instance, and we actually use a completely different content management system than the university does.
Once you get the responsive web design piece working, do you see that and the app coexisting, or do you see it eventually replacing the app to have one interface and one code base for the whole mobile presence?
No, I think the app, as long as it's relevant and useful for our students, the app will live on, and we'll continue developing on it too. Maybe not at the same pace that we've been going, but absolutely there are things we want to add. I don't know how many of you upgraded to the newest iOS 6, yeah? And then, okay, so so you know how like Google Maps used to be really, really great when it was a built-in app in your phone, and then they moved it to the web and replaced it with Apple Maps. The web, who prefers the web version of Google Maps to the app of Google Maps? Who preferred the app to, yeah, all right, you guys are weird. I really preferred the built-in version, right? And there's just something, there's an experience that can happen with a built-in app on your phone that can't really happen with a web-based site, and that's just, I think that's just the way it is for now. I don't know, maybe the technologies will improve enough by next October that we can make that jump, but.
I think responsive web design is going to be good, but I think the app's going to be better. And I think we have so many Apple users that it's worth keeping an app in that space. So.
I'm actually wondering how much in terms of like marketing, like the library did to promote the app, because I know that one of the problems that we had is we had created an app, but I guess maybe in terms of population, we don't have as big of a, Apple device user base. Yep. And so our app was really not very much used, even though we had created something actually fairly similar. Although I don't know if it had all the features that you guys had, but we did create an app. We didn't really get the user base that we would have thought we would have gotten. So I'm wondering kind of how much marketing you did around it.
We did a lot. We worked directly with the marketing communications department on campus. They like to pick up sexy stories that make us all look good. So they did a lot of stories. We were doing interviews with the student newspapers. We posted publicity on all of our flat screens around campus. We published it, obviously, on the library's website, but then in every single space that we could think of, the students have an online portal, so we created some banner publicity to pop into the portal with information about the app and where to find it. And they put out a press release, a public press release, and I sort of thought, like, Global TV is not really going to be interested in MacEwan Library's library app. But they called us for an interview right when we got to Montreal. So our library technology coordinator actually did an interview on Global, which was good. The one thing that we did do that actually gets the most downloads, so I can see when there's spikes in the downloads for a day, is we talked to all the librarians who are teaching, and we teach thousands of students. We reach probably about 80% of our student population with information literacy sessions, and we created a slide for them to pop in at the beginning of each of their sessions, and every time somebody's taught and they've used that slide in their presentation, our downloads bump up. We can see exactly how many people were in that class that day who decided, hey, that's a cool thing, I should use that. So.
My question is, how many person hours, when you talk about marketing, developing the whole ball of wax, how many person hours do you think you guys have put into this project?
I know how many developer hours we put in because we get that invoiced. So I don't know about
a lot.
A lot
of
yeah.
developer hours.
Well, but I mean, some of us are in small places where we want to advocate for this, so it's good to have an idea of.
So probably about, so far, about 800 hours of development and design time from a professional firm. So that can give you an idea of how much that thing costs from that side of things. For us, time that we put in-house, it's just me, Robert, and Michael Schouten, our programmer, working on this project, and I'm not working on it full-time. I mean, I'm putting in maybe 20% of my time each week for that. So in-house, not as much. If you can pay to outsource this, then that helps. But if you can't, then it's tougher. Yeah.
Is your code available?
It's not, because we paid somebody else to do it for us. We own it, but we can't share it as part of our licensing agreement. We had to make some hard decisions about that, right? It costs a lot more to get a developer to make a code that's going to be available for you to share with other institutions when it's their living to build apps. So definitely when we start moving into responsive web design, we'll be using tools like Drupal, and those kinds of, that code is going to be publicly available to the community, but this code is something that we had to make that decision, and it was one that was really hard, but I think it's the best one for us in our particular situation. So.
Any other questions? Well, big round of applause. Thanks, guys. That was great.